firing you up.
This is Appetite for Distortion.
Welcome to the podcast, Appetite for Distortion, episode number 383. My name is Brando, and welcome to 2023. 2023. I'm going to be 40 this year. When did that happen? Not until September, so I'm going to hold on to my 30s as long as possible. But how did that happen? Whoa. I'm here to talk about last year and what's to come this year. So this episode is just you and me and you. So happy together. Sorry, I'm breaking into the Turtles song. By the way, this is a digression with a point that I sing that song to my cats, and I've often wondered, does Axl Rose sing to his cats? He has to. You know he has to, right? Don't we all do that? We all stop being like mature adults when it comes to like little animals. He's got to be like, you know what you are? You're in the litter box, baby. You're gonna poop. All right, so I'm losing it. But I guess that kind of goes with this year, 2023. I'm gonna be more myself, more confident in who I am. It's always been a battle with me, confidence, which is certainly a very difficult thing to battle in this very public career of radio. But I've enjoyed it. So I figured for this episode, go back to basics, just me and the microphone talking to you. And by the way, they say that when you first start out in radio, that you want to talk to one person, make it sound like you're talking to one person. Although I am so grateful I have more than one listener. I'm getting kind of a hard-earned, I don't want to say wake-up call. It was to be expected, but you may have noticed I also launched a spin-off podcast, Appetite for Horror, and there are 6 episodes up already, and the numbers are okay for a new podcast, but certainly not what Appetite for Distortion is, which is we are still nothing compared to, you know, I don't want to say Joe Rogan, because he's the highest of all the highs, but we have a nice little fan base here on Appetite for Distortion, and I want to keep that. I want to keep growing that, because there are many of the loyal ones that have been here since episode 1, but I'm always getting messages. Oh, I just found you. I'm catching up. So we have not hit our peak. Like, not even close to it. We got to tell more people about us so they can find us. But now I go back. So this past year has been interesting, to say the least, for me. I hope it was a good one for you. They say, you know, new year, new me, but there are things about last year I want to take with me, and there's some things that I don't. I think that can be said for all of us. For one, the thing that I don't want to take with me, and I'm only a few days away from getting rid of it, is my lisp. So you may remember, it's been a year. Last January, stupidly, I was driving in bad weather. I've driven in bad weather so many times in my life, but I should consider different things now that I was traveling with my wife, not taking certain risks. Not like I was driving dangerous per se, but black ice, you never know. We are very lucky that all we did was total the car. She had some bruising from the airbags, which is what you want. And I broke my tooth and my glasses. So that was fun. And obviously a busted lip. I looked like a mess. I really did. Chipped a tooth. So it's taken a year to get a tooth implant. I have the screw in there now, so visualize that. So it's the how long it takes to heal, and when you're able to do it, the bone has to form around the screw. Incredible stuff. But the fact that it's taken a year. So as I'm recording this, it is January 2nd. So yeah, I'm going to have my appointment to finally get my friggin' front tooth back. Not even like it was a back tooth. No, it's how I say things with S's and F's. So on this Thursday, it's been such a long time coming. It's affected my self-esteem my confidence, which has always been an issue regardless of a front tooth or not, having a lisp or not, because, well, I love doing this podcast with you all, and it affected me. I mean, I didn't get messages of being like, oh, why you sound different, nothing like that. I know it was primarily in my head. But when I'm interviewing some really awesome people, like George Thorogood or Dave Mustaine or, people from Skid Row, it's just, when people are finding me for the first time, this is not the first impression I want to give. Like, who is this guy who's talking like he's, filming a Cable Guy sequel? Like, who is this guy? But that's what I would think about. And I mentioned my glasses because as I do, not this episode per se, but I've been doing many a Zoom, and I was at my backup glasses for a while. And again, this is how my brain thinks. The glare was so bad. Like, every episode you see me with my backup glasses, it just looks like I have two lights for eyes. Like, it bothered the hell out of it. It would be distracting for me. Because, again, a first impression for somebody finding Appetite for Distortion for the first time. Who is this guy who, like, it looks bad. It doesn't sound as good as it can. So that's my thought process. So for so many reasons, I wanted this year to go fast. I wanted to get my tooth back and really hit the ground running again once I could speak and look normally again to my eyes. But it was a good year still. I got married. I recently moved to a bigger apartment that's ours. Apartment where I knew ahead of time that I was going to have to build my own little home studio. 'Cause for the longest time when I was feeling my quarantine doing shows from my apartment as opposed to the radio studio, I'm just on an IKEA couch with all my equipment on a little IKEA table. And it was kind of awkward. But now I have a desk. I have a desk chair. It looks like a studio. I'll take picture. I've shared a picture on social media, but I'm waiting to put some GNR posters behind me to really give the effect, because it's not done yet, and I feel like I could still improve it. But that's neither here nor there. But still, getting settled in that way. Now I feel comfortable doing a show, like a real show, that I'm not just at home in my pajama pants, which I guess maybe I still am, but still. I'm in a professional chair at a professional desk, and it just looks professional. New glasses, gonna get a new tooth. Everything is professional, and I'm just excited for just that part of 2023 to really get into gear. One thing I was hoping to talk to you about, there was a few things I was hoping to talk to you about, because the last episode that we did an Australian review. Had some awesome Guns N' Roses fans from Australia come on the show and talk about the microphone incident and the drone incidents and just all the chaos, I say chaos. This band has been through real chaos. I say facetiously, the minor things that happened to them on the tour. But I also mentioned, I give a teaser, because at that time, Rolling Stone magazine had not put out this article yet about Rick Dunsford, the band fan. I believe it's called the article, "The Search for a Lost GNR Masterpiece," I believe is the name of the article. And within that episode, I was given a teaser because it hadn't dropped yet. So now I'm doing a podcast, and I want to talk about that Rolling Stone article that would have dropped did drop like a week or so ago. I'm not in it. Bummer. Very bummer. And part of me, because I feel like I said, I just want a blurb. I wasn't expecting to be featured like that. So back in March, I want to say, Rick approached me. He's like, People Magazine, they want to do an article about me and Guns N' Roses and leaks and stuff. I'm like, People Magazine? Why would they want to do that? Like, they have nothing to do with rock and roll, and especially such an obscure story. But I found out that he was telling people some of that to kind of cover Rolling Stone's ass in case of the wrong people heard about it and were going to start harassing Rolling Stone and kill the article before it even came out. So once I found out it was Rolling Stone, I told Rick. Somebody else told me that somebody else who was interviewed. And I'm like, yeah, Rolling Stone. I want to be interviewed by Rolling Stone. To have my name in there, that would be huge for my self-esteem and the podcast to get my name in there. It would be huge. So, and I kept it a secret. You know, most of you, if you listen to this podcast, you know about Rick's story. I've done episodes with Rick that I've had to hide, which is the irony of it all, that I told this story, had Rick tell this story a few years ago, and through threats, I had to take it down or just make it private. And now it's published in Rolling Stone magazine. Just wow. I wouldn't believe it. It's just, you wouldn't believe it. Just the story itself is crazy, but just this, getting the story out and all the other variables. The story itself was fine. If you read it, I know a lot of people who found out about this crazy underground that are we Guns N' Roses fans make up. You know, some more toxic than others, or just flabbergasted. I felt like they painted the picture very well. It was very well written. But just knowing what I know, what I've been through, I just feel like some people got off easy. Some of the trolls, some, I don't know, I feel like there were more stories to tell, but I could see how difficult that could be. Because I actually did reach out to the author of the article. I wasn't like mad that I wasn't in it. I was more bummed out kind of thing, just disappointed. So Dave, where's his last name? Dave Peisner, forgive me. So he was the author of the article. And like I said, you know, hey, great article. You know, glad you finally got it out, because I know you're working on it for so long. Kind of bummed I'm not in it, but still, you know, have a great holiday. That's all I said. And he was really nice. He said, I'm bummed you're not included too. He said that I was in the original draft, but once he turned it into the editing process, streamlining and just of a very complicated story. So there's a lot of people that are involved in it after that, and things getting end up on the cutting room floor. But that's the nature of the beast. He said that, and I understand that. And that's, we're going to get to more of the nature of the beast in a second. That he was frustrated with it, but that's the nature of the beast. And not uncommon. I completely understand all of that. And he didn't even have to explain all of this to me. So David, thank you for just telling me that. But it made me feel good that, like, I'm on the same page. Like, I get it. I'm bummed out, but I get it. So, yeah, I hopefully maybe I'll make Rolling Stone one day for an interview that I did. Maybe that's the way I want to make Rolling Stone. And it also got me thinking, and somebody mentioned this, maybe I don't want to be associated with that article. Right? And I would be, if people hearing about me for the first time would think I'm just I don't know, somebody associated with stealing of leaks and selling in the underground. So maybe it's a blessing in disguise that I wasn't included in this article. It was a good experience. Initially I was a little peeved. I will admit that. I'm like, I wasted like an hour and a half of my time. Whatever. I would have wasted that time anyway. So no fault to Dave, no fault to Rolling Stone. Read the article if you haven't yet. And good for Rick for getting this all off his chest. I know he's a controversial character. I'll say this, and I'll say it again. I don't approve of anything that he did, but I like Rick. I joke with him all the time. I'll say it to you, and I say it to Rick privately. Hey, if your wife doesn't leave you, hasn't left you for spending all this money on Guns N' Roses, like unfinished songs, bless you. Good for you. I don't care. And he's not the one that stole the material. That's completely different. I know it. If we were talking about drugs, you know, there would be no excuse. He would be in on it. He's buying it. We're not talking about drugs. We're talking about music. And you can go with the morality of it. Axl didn't want these heard. I get it. But Rick being maybe perhaps the most visible, I guess, of all these people that were involved, kind of just got the brunt of the punishment, being banned from shows. I just think that's shitty. It's petty stuff. Sorry, Fernando. I just think that's lame. I don't know. I've never spoken to Fernando. I don't know his side of it. I know that Rick is a little bummed out that their friendship deteriorated because they started out really well. So, and that's all I can go by. I can just go by Rick's story. So I have no problem with Rick, and there's no reason people are like, oh, you should have Rick back on the show. Why? I don't need to. His story's out there. It's been told. There's no reason to belabor the point. There's no reason to. So I have no issue with Rick, although, again, I never approved of what he did. I thought it was always kind of crazy, to go on these long, hour-long, journeys to get these songs from a storage locker and, again, thousands upon thousands of dollars. And I'll say that it's funny like this because on a lesser extent, because his son's name is Axel, right? And I know many of you listening have a similar situation, that you have a son named Axel, or perhaps you have pets. I've talked to many of you, a dog named Axel and Slash and things like that. I'll say this, my son's not going to be named Axel. We did think about it. And that's just, I'm making a point of being like, I'm a fan, but sometimes I'll look at other fans and being like, okay, I respect your fandom, but I'm not going to go that far. And this is coming from somebody who made a Guns N' Roses podcast. So it's too on brand. We even joked about doing Axel Matthews because her favorite band is Dave Matthews. It's a cool sounding name, but it's too on brand. I can't do it. So I respect Rick's fandom. Kid named Axel. He's gotten his story told. He got interviewed by Rolling Stone, pictures. I mean, I know it's been a roller coaster ride. He's not really involved in the GNR fandom community anymore because a lot of people are toxic and say mean things about him. If you think he's, if he wants his 15 minutes or he's doing this for attention, I don't know, man. I think it's a little similar as far as the attention seeking, for lack of a better term, like with the Australian woman that got hit in the face. She didn't ask for anything. Like her local news went to her when they found out about it. And it's, if you're not a public figure and your news wants to interview you about something maybe not that serious, you do it. So I think Rick just had these opportunities and his way of being involved in Guns N' Roses, and I don't want to say it backfired, but it's been a long journey for him. So hopefully it's finally finished and he can move on from this Rolling Stone article, right? A couple things I do want to mention because I also want to move on from certain things and Nature of the Beast, but a lot of people were concerned about how it would make management look. This article. That's what I was interested to see too. Like, oh, once this article comes out, that's it for Team Brazil. I just think a lot of people just have no idea what's going on there, and I don't even really know what's going on there. But I want to mention this too because people are like, oh, that's going to make Team Brazil look bad. They're not real managers. They're not going anywhere because they are. I've never met them, but they are good people to Axel. They've done good things for Axel. And it's an interesting thing that I want to mention because the soccer icon or the football icon, depending upon what part of the world you live on, Pele recently passed away. I'm not a soccer person, football person, like at all, but I know Pele. Everybody knows Pele. It's like, Babe Ruth, Wayne Gretzky, Michael Jordan. He's even beyond that because it's more of a global sport than certainly hockey or anything like that. So I'm bringing that up, and this is just an interesting thing that I saw, that a lot of us saw. So Beta posted this on her Instagram. It's a very young Beta and Pele, and hugging each other. And this is after he passed, of course. I love you, my friend. You've always been good to me, my family. Helped me get to the U.S. where I am today, and I also met a wonderful human being. You offered me a job in Australia, but it's too far away from my family. So many memories. You are home now, my friend. No more pain. Besides being the king, you are always a great friend. Love you always. I will celebrate you no matter where you are in the universe. You now shine in the skies. It's very sweet, and who would have ever guessed that the icon Pele would have a 6 degrees of Guns N' Roses bacon, to use my term. Wow. So very cool, Beta, to share that story. And I want to mention this, and this is going to segue into what I really need to talk about with you about moving on, the Nature of the Beast and everything. And that's the book with Doug Goldstein. That it's not happening, at least not with me. I bring Beta up now because there are a few things I'm not going to spoil. If Doug ever comes out with a book, I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but there's certain things that I feel as we were taking you along for this ride, I feel like you deserve to know now. I'm not going to give you over details, but there's certain things I think you need to know that maybe the book or first draft would have been done by now if I had my way. But it's not. So it's, again, certain things that I want you to know. So Beta basically saved Axl. I'm sure many of you know that. But when Stephanie Seymour was engaged to Axl Rose, Beta was the one that told Axl she's cheating. And that's underselling it, by the way. For now, that's all I can say is that Beta was the one that kind of got Axl out of that toxic relationship. And you may know Axl offered her, a job because, well, she was going to be fired, right? You're working for me. That's what Stephanie would think. You're working for me, and you're ratting me out. You're gone. Why would she have a job with Stephanie Seymour after that? But Axl knew how much she loved Axl. She knew how much Axl loved Dylan, Stephanie's son, and she told Axl, and that's so Axl's kind of forever in gratitude partially for that. And there's another thing I wanted to talk to you about, again, not going into overt details because that's not my place right now, but I feel I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm taking a stand with certain things that I feel like you need to know. She also helped save Axl from some, let's just say, suicidal tendencies. Not the band, but actual, suicidal tendencies. And that also involved Doug helping Axl. Some of you may know this because Doug has had, even when we were working on the book, would have a habit of telling stories that I'm like, save it for the book, but it'll be on like when he did the Reels thing, the Reels documentary, telling certain stories that I thought were going to be saved, or, I saw he would do other podcasts, tell stories. I'm just like, you're spoiling your own book. Whatever, that's neither here nor there. So let's get into it about the nature of the beast and everything, and the reason why I'm telling you this now in this way. So I don't know, maybe it's been a year. It's been more than a year and a half, 2 years. I don't know if it's been quite 2 years that Doug and I made the announcement on my podcast that we were working on his autobiography. And if you don't remember, Doug came to me with this. He, just like with all my guests, were just, I interview them guests. Some I can be friendly with on social media, but no one other than, let's just say, oddly enough, Alan Niven ever would just reach out to me to say hello and check in. Alan does it by email. Doug does it by phone. And to me, that's interesting. Phone's a little bit more personal. So when I would get just phone calls from Doug Goldstein randomly, I remember one time I got it randomly. Where were we vacationing? I forget. We might have been in Chicago at this time. But I'm like, interesting. Like Doug Goldstein. I'm telling my wife, like, this is Doug Goldstein, former Guns N' Roses manager. He wants to talk to me. He's just telling me stories, being nice. I'm like, all right, I'll be on the phone with him for a little bit. Cool. And maybe he was just doing his recon on me because he would eventually ask me to help write his autobiography that he's tried before, that there was an author, a journalist for Rolling Stone Italy that he tried with a few years ago, and the guy really wasn't as committed. Like, he just couldn't find the time. They had worked on an outline. They even sent me the outline to work with, but that was it. So he asked me, and I said to him, like, are you sure? I mean, this is obviously, I want to do this, but I'm not by trade. I mean, I am and I'm not. So this is part of it too. I am and I'm not by trade or a writer or an author. I mean, I've been doing creative writing since grade school. That's always been kind of my focus. I'm not a math kid, not a science kid, even though I love science. Not a social studies kid. I always went towards writing and public speaking. So yeah, that's kind of the way I was as a kid before any sort of career manifested. Taking journalism in high school, doing that, and college, broadcast journalism, writing articles, and in addition to just typically just writing college papers, but I don't count that sort of thing. And he also knew that I had. It's an odd story. Isn't it all odd? But when I moved up to Cape Cod, Massachusetts, for my first radio gig, that it was just a part-time gig, and I had to find other work to survive. And one of which was at this. It's called Hallett's Store, HALLET''S, Hallett's, and it's been around for like over 100 years. And if you're familiar with Cape Cod at all, Cape Cod, Massachusetts, it's a vacation area, very old school. So a lot of stores are just old houses, not very commercial there, just old, very, very towny, very, I don't know, I like it, very quaint, very quaint. It would be a beautiful place to live, but, well, winter, everything closes. But he himself, like Doug, wanted to write a book about his life, mainly about his family's life. So as I mentioned, the house is over 100 years old. It used to be a pharmacy. It used to be a post office. And he had in the attic all these old documents and photographs and, just things from the town for years and years. And he always wanted to put together in a book. And he asked his son to do it with him, and his son had no interest. So he sees my resume, which I applied to, make fucking sandwiches in the back while starting my radio career. He's like, you have some writing experience. I would like to do this with you if you're up to it. And I'm like, okay, how are we going to do it? He's like, I'll just tell you what to write. And he had dyslexia. You're going to help me. We worked on it together. Like all winter, like 8-hour days. He paid me minimum wage. He would make me sandwiches, lunch. He wasn't a rich guy at all. Very salt of the earth, made everything himself, very DIY everything, including this book. This DIY, the Hallett Family of Cape Cod book. I don't know, years ago, I think it was up to 500 copies that it sold or whatever. It makes me feel good. I used for years, I put that on my resume. It's not like it's a War and Peace. It's not like a ton of writing in it. It's a lot of pictures, but it's still, I put together a self-published book. And also throughout my career, there was a time I wanted to maybe go to journalism school and get my master's in journalism. So I was trying to get more writing experience and writing little articles for online outlets about, sometimes it would be a charity, a golf outing or it would be this big thing at a school event, and I would cover these things. And that's how you do it as a reporter. You have to start out in small stories. And I was doing that. But radio is just where I love doing this. So I really didn't stick with the writing too much. So that kind of brings us, that's my experience with writing. And as you see just by following this podcast, I'm not a good speller. I may not be the best grammar-wise, but I'm good with the edit button. I think I write pretty well. If you look at all the summaries of these episodes, I think I write them pretty well. So I think I'm a pretty good writer, but I know I'm not a author by trade or a journalist by career. I'm a radio guy first, but I have a very strong background in writing. So this was like, okay, great. This is going to be good. Doug's like, you're the guy. You have my best interest in mind. You know the material. Let's go. So, as I'm sure I've said over the past year, over whatever episode I brought it up in, that we would do Zoom interviews, and I would be talking to him for, hour and a half, 2 hours, and it would be about a variety of topics, or we would focus on one, and I had to think of questions to ask if I wanted to move the conversation one way or the other, or whatever. So I would transcribe these through a transcription program, and even then it's not perfect, so I would go through it again and have it make sense. Because picture Doug talking. It's Doug. He's very excitable. He has a lot of things to say. He's very intelligent. But he's also, it's not like he's talking in a book way. He's not like chapter 1, let's do this. He says, here's a story. Here's what I feel about this. And I got to make sure that's comprehensible and then find a place to put it and what makes sense. So this was a big puzzle piece, So big puzzle piece. And then maybe it was like a X amount of months into it, maybe even a year into it. He's like, Anthony Boza contacted me. Anthony, you may know, wrote Slash's book or co-wrote Slash's book, Tommy Lee's book, a bunch of other. He's legit, like a legit author. And I thought Doug was going to be like, I think I should go with him, Brandon. I'm sorry. There was no deadline, But Doug always said, I want to be able to almost tour with Guns N' Roses, so to speak. He would be like Pete Rose signing autographs outside the Hall of Fame. Like, he wouldn't be allowed in, but he wants to be there. 'Cause he wants to be where the action is. And I got that. And who knows? I don't know if Guns N' Roses is ever going to stop touring. So is there really a deadline? But still, we didn't want this taking a Chinese democracy era amount of time. But unlike the self-published book, I'm not doing this 8 hours a day. I can't. I have other jobs. I'm not getting paid to work with Doug. This was always about an end result situation, and that was always understood. So cool. Then after a while, we have like a bunch. We have close to 200 pages. Close to 200 pages of organized thoughts. Organized, and then through that, I'm like, okay, what makes sense for chapters? But even before, so I had like these. That's what I did. I actually had like chapters. Like, would they have been the final product? I don't know. But it helped me create a flow and where to put things. Because as we all do, I do it. You repeat things, and it's like, you know what? You said this before. I can either get rid of it or I can move it back. I like the way you said it this way better. Again, a puzzle piece, moving things around. Doug goes, I think we should be getting paid to do this. Oh, well, yeah, cool. Let's get paid to do this. So he went to a marketing, a literary agency guy, and for me to not be vague and not be confusing about it, and also protect names, let's just call him Jack from Folio Marketing. Let's call him that. So we went to this Jack, and we like, okay, what do we need? What are we going to need for a book? And he sends us, what I'm sure he sends all his authors on this agency, a to-do list, things to have. And there was a lot, very overwhelming stuff, like especially the stuff that includes marketing, which is I'm not a marketing person. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll find help. I'll figure out a way how to get this done for him. But there was in there he wanted a 1-page summary of the book. Yeah, I guess a 1-page summary, then a 3 to 5 page expansion of that. And I wrote those 2 things. And it's funny, I sent them to my therapist. By the way, I want to be honest. I stopped seeing my therapist a few months ago. We'll still text every now and then, but now at this point in my life, I don't know. I've gotten tired of hearing myself complain about things, and I want to focus on the family I have now and grow that. Like, without her, I would not have been able to get this point in my life, and I'm forever indebted. I'm still on my medication, but maybe I'll go back. But I wanted to let you guys, because I'm going to keep everything completely real and honest, and I've spoken about therapy, and that was spoken about in the book. So, I mean, I'm really emotionally invested in this book, talking about Axel's mental health and Duff's mental health and Doug's mental health, and perhaps my mental health was helping shape these stories, given with my stories that you may not know, that throughout my 20s I didn't want to be here, that I had a dad that committed suicide. I felt like I'm the right guy, more than just the Guns N' Roses reasons, but the mental health reason. This was not just going to be a tell-all from an ex-manager. This was going to be a book you learn from, and a book that makes you feel included, all through Guns N' Roses, like how I do this podcast, essentially, but using Doug's stories. Different. So I get this stuff. I give it to this guy, Jack. He's like, what is this? This is, no, I'm sorry. This is not going to work out. Speaks to Doug first. Apparently tells Doug that I'm not the guy. He needs to find somebody else. He ends up speaking to me on the phone. And after Doug said, like, no, Brandon is the guy, this guy Jack is still telling me, he's like, you could be, you could write well now, but you don't have those years of experience, which is what's required for this. You don't write like an author. I'm not trying to write like an author. I'm trying to write like Doug. This is Doug's story and his words. I'm not writing War and Peace. I'm not writing a big thing. When I did, it's really funny. So these are a couple of things that tie in. I'm like, okay, what am I missing here? But what I'm missing is that I'm not a huge... It's parallel with podcasting. Yeah, I do a podcast, but I don't really listen to podcasts. I'm a radio guy. I'm a music guy. But with reading, I don't really read. It's like, how am I writing a book when I don't read? I did go through a major phase of reading in my early 20s. And I did read Anthony Bose's books, Tommyland and Slash. I did read those books. So I've read most of my life. It's been mostly rock autobiographies, but another author that I really feel makes me, even though I'm not technically an author, it makes me know what to look for and what I want, and is a great example. If you know who he is, you should, hopefully, is Mitch Albom. His most famous book is probably Tuesdays with Morrie. He also wrote the 5 People You Meet in Heaven. He's written a lot of great books, and I was reading his books to kind of heal at the time. When my grandpa was dying, I was taking care of him. So it was kind of like Tuesdays. I used to call, instead of Tuesdays with Morrie, it was Mondays with Martin. My grandpa, his name was Martin. So it was helping me get through stuff. And the way he wrote, wow. I still remember, just like, it's picking up on not just the dialogue between two people and making you think. It's the description of the homes and the floor and the carpeting and then what people were wearing and everything was just so vivid. I'm like, wow, I naturally do not have that. That is something I have to work on, and I'm aware of that. But this guy that I sent, Jack, knows that we're not even up to that part yet. We have the meat and potatoes. Like, I'm getting stories about Doug's childhood, but I don't know what his dad looks like yet. Because I don't want to deviate from the stories. Oh, well, my dad's this and this going on with this happened. Oh, well, what color is his hair? I'll ask that later and put it in. But it's like he didn't see this. He didn't understand that, which is just flabbergasting to me. It's like, I'm not sending you finished stuff. I'm letting you know where we're at and to go forward. And all this guy wanted to do was tell Doug to get rid of me and would give me, all right, you know what? Work on this. You keep saying you have, X amount of pages, this and that. You were working on this for a year. You should have more for a year. Whoa. Who the fuck are you telling me what I should have done this past year? He doesn't know I got married. Doesn't know I got into a car accident. Doesn't know about my other jobs. Fuck you. Are you paying me? You paying me, asshole? No, he's not. So if I'm angry at anybody, I'm angry at this guy, Jack. As I guess you should be too, this guy Jack. So I don't want to be angry in this portion of our conversation today. So, but if there is any, it's towards this guy, because it goes to show you sometimes people at the top have no idea what they're talking about, or just are not they're not good bosses. They might have they're checking. They have check boxes of what they need to do as a boss, but there's no real understanding. There's no real understanding of the material. And they just know, does it fill A, B, C, and D? Okay. But anything outside of that, like, whoa, I can't handle this. So I took time. He gave me a deadline, which I couldn't believe. Again, like, who the fuck are you? And Doug fought for a longer deadline for me. I'm like, all right, fine. So this was back in September. And I'm like, here are the 2 most shaped chapters that you can read about from now. And what I was able to do, but not to the extent that I wanted, and this was a challenge, was having not just me read it, but Doug read it. And Doug did read those, but I don't think we spent the amount of time of like, okay, I've read this chapter. I've done this chapter over 10 times now. I feel like I need you to read it too, and we need to go to somebody else to make this. It's still not ready. And that's why I said they're shaped chapters. They're not ready. But again, this is going to help paint a picture, because this guy was like, character building. Yeah, no shit character building. Like, you're seeing a minor part of the bigger picture. Like, how many times in a movie are you watching it and they kind of go right into the story and you don't find out about the characters until later? You got to hang on. You got to put the pieces together. Are you going to be spoon-fed everything right away like an idiot? I don't think so. So I was like, what are you talking about? Give me something that I can fix instead of telling me things I already know. And the guy, Jack, never did. He kept saying, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing it here, or nothing ever specific to the book or Doug's stories. Nothing. It makes me think of like he may have glossed over it and didn't really spend any true time on it and just had it in his mind right away that I want Doug working with somebody else because this guy's not a professional. And I can't market this guy. I can't market him because this isn't like it's a book from Izzy Stradlin that could possibly sell on its own. Doug's book might need a little help with the marketing because he's not a household name. He is with us Guns N' Roses fans. So I think that's what this guy saw. Didn't see enough from me or didn't allow me the time. It's just like I didn't have what I needed. And Doug knew that. He knows that. And it got to a point where I said to Doug, look, I have other things I need to focus on. This past year, I've dealt with a lot. I've spent a lot of time on the book. I was happy not to do as many episodes this year, even though we did plenty. One for my tooth, and two to focus on the book because I want this to happen. But this is your story. And even though you said at the beginning, which is true, he's like, this is 50-50 between us. And I said, maybe 60-40 you, because it's your story. And you asked me to be a part of this. We were on same page, out for each other's best interests. And Doug's like, oh, maybe this could be a new career for you and help you in your life. Wow. Great. I enjoy doing podcasting and radio more than writing, but still, this is just a wonderful opportunity. But I'd say to Doug, like, just tell me what you want to do. If you feel like you need to stay with this agency, because obviously there's so many literary agencies there, and not to over-explain for Doug's benefit, but it's not that this guy Jack is friends with Doug, but there's a connection there that Doug doesn't want to ruin, and wanted it to work out. He wanted it to work out with me and Jack. And it's like, I'm not getting from him what I need. And he says I'm not giving him what he needs, but we're not on the same wavelength. I think he's already made his decision. He's not going to give me another X amount of months or a year, and I need that time from you, Doug, too. And it's difficult. It's so funny. I've never met Doug actually physically in person. So many hours spent talking on the phone or on Zoom, and he's got a busy life. He's a lot of stuff going on with his job, his family, and things going on. But he's kind of got to a point where, like, we're not connecting. It's another wasted weekend of me not doing anything that I could be doing for the book. I was always working on something like editing, but I'm like, I'm not still getting the material I need. Where I should be working on this 8 hours a day. We should be working on this 8 hours a day or hours and hours a day. And it is hard. And some of the fault comes on me because to put that amount of time into a book when you have other stuff going on is a lot. And you're not getting paid for it. Doug knew that. So that's why it was like a pressure-free environment. We were having fun with it. That's what we want. That was the whole point of it. And to bring you along, the fans. That's why Doug wanted to make the announcement on the podcast to you, the listener, to ask you to submit questions to my the podcast email. We were supposed to do a podcast talking to you about the questions and the update with the book, and that never happened. I gave a date, I think, on it, and it never happened. And it just got frustrating. I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, what is this? I want to do this. My heart's in this. But I think this guy threw a monkey wrench that just unfortunately was too... it was thrown too hard to work around. So it just became frustrating. And Doug tried to think of a solution that would work for me, and it just wasn't working. Other than, let's just keep going. And unfortunately, it's not going to work out with this guy because he doesn't want to work with me. I don't know what else to tell you. And I unfortunately have had to make the decision to be like, I'm out. I'm out. He's not saying it. Bless Doug. Okay, bless him. I've had many a wonderful conversation with him, you know, but just he wasn't then giving me the answer that I needed. Okay, Brandon, I'm sorry this didn't work out. Okay, let's move on. Let's do this. Nothing was definitive, and I'm like, I can't. It's unfair to me, and I think it's unfair to you. Because again, with this, the book was incorporated into the podcast, and I just feel like I have to be quiet. I have to be silenced about it. No. That's not how I am. That's just not how I am. I am a very open and honest person. I know, much like the Rolling Stone article, that I kept it quiet for almost a year, when not to say things, when to say things. But it gets to a point where you need to say something because other people are involved, and those other people are you. So I need to move on in 2023, focus more on this podcast, of course, focus on my family and everything like that. I guess that's minor stuff, but this podcast has to be taken to another level, and I really want this to be the year to do that. And I can't have anything pulling me down. And it sucks because Doug has been a very wonderful part of this podcast. That I just right now, I don't foresee an episode with him right now because it's just kind of awkward for me. And he's gotten some great guests on the show too, but I've obviously done enough on my own. So it's just I wanted to have a happy ending at some point, but right now, no, I have to move on. I have to move on from the book, and I guess can't do it anymore because it just bummed me out. It was affecting me mentally. Am I that bad of a writer? Like, am I dumb? Do I write like an idiot? Am I stupid? Like, what am I missing here? So actually, what I did, and this was great advice from my therapist before I stopped seeing her, was get a book under his umbrella of Folio Marketing. Read it, see what you're missing, because you're not reading books. You've read a lot of books. You have a lot of, history with writing. She's obviously intelligent, being a therapist. Her husband works at NASA, and they read what I sent them, and they thought it was brilliant. And they don't even like Guns N' Roses, and they liked it. I'm like, okay, but I'm not like, oh, they like it, that means it's great. I'm somebody that I want you to tell me when something's wrong. How can I make it better? Because of how much I doubt myself. So if you tell me it's perfect, I'm going to be like, no, it's not. No, it's not perfect. But at the same time, when you tell me it's shit, and I know it's not shit, come on. So I at least have some confidence in myself. But what I did is I bought Lita Ford's book. And she actually thanks this guy, Jack, her first thank you in the back of the book. And I'm like, really? So I didn't finish it, but I read the first well over 100 pages. That's enough. That's some more pages that I've read in a book in years. And boy, I don't know if you've read Lita Ford's book. I mean, it's a very color by numbers rock star autobiography. It really is. And if anything, it's less than, because there are parts of her story I'm like, that's it? We're moving on to the next thing already? I want to know more how about you feel about this. And there was literally an entire paragraph where every sentence started with the word I. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you kidding me? That is like, I would have gotten a C on that paper. No. You're that uncreative? Come on. Like, what is this? And another thing this guy had mentioned was, like, you're writing like, well, then this happened, and then that happened, and then this happened. Yeah, that's how you move forward in a story. That's how you move forward. But you're not doing it back to back to back. You're putting things in there. But I would read things in Lita Ford's book. Well, yeah, and that's when this happened, and then that's when this happened. And I called this guy out on it. And the emails got angrier from him. I'm like, dude, I don't know where this is going. I'm just trying to write a book here, and you're not. You keep giving me roadblocks. You're not helping me at all. Help me get to this where you want it. And he just never did. So to me, that's a bad boss. Doug thinks he has no ulterior motives, but I'm sure he has a friend that he wants to recommend. And look, if I don't know if Doug's working on his books with somebody else right now. I don't. It's not my business anymore. It's not going to be the same as if it was with me. I'll tell you that right now. But again, I'm not going to go out and spoil any of his stories, but I mean, it was important for you to know, and it was important for me to know what Beta did for Axl and how important she is to him and that family is to him. So they're not going anywhere. A Rick Dunsford article or not, they're not going anywhere. Doug was very important to Axl for a very long time, and I respect that. I really do. That's it, I guess. That's bummer. I know. It really is a bummer, but it's a life lesson, I suppose. I certainly know a lot more about Guns N' Roses through this process than I did before. But at the end of the day, being a Guns N' Roses fan now, all we really want is new music and to enjoy this band now. I mean, the past is fun to talk about, of course. That's what this podcast is. A lot of it's built on. But I'm looking forward to seeing what 2023 brings for the podcast, for Guns N' Roses, and see what's to come. And as I mentioned, just because I was like, what am I doing? I'm not working on this book now. That's when I decided to launch Appetite for Horror. So you can find my spin-off podcast, Appetite for Horror, on our YouTube page, Appetite for Distortion YouTube page. I made a playlist of just Appetite for Horror. It's on iHeartRadio. It's on Spotify. It's we got social media, Appetite for Horror, on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Check it out. Guests so far have been with some actors and producers from Terrifier and Terrifier 2. Very, very violent. Very violent and evil clown movies. Love it. Tales from the Crypt. Al Katz from Tales from the Crypt. We talked about his Slash episode. Very small part, but him hanging out on set for days, even though his part was so small. His part was so small. That sounds weird out of context. We also spoke with Ace Von Johnson of LA Guns. You would think I would have him on this podcast, but he's such a horror freak. Let's have him on Appetite for Horror, and he's also was a part of this documentary called The History of Metal and Horror. I had the director of that on as well. And the most recent episode is with Michael Jai White, Spawn. So that was pretty cool. So I'm getting some cool guests, but the listenership, not a lot of people know about it yet. It's my social media is not anywhere near what Appetite for Distortion is. So if you like horror also, please like Appetite for Horror. Okay, so it's going to be fun. And we're going to see where that goes. I had no idea where this podcast would go. 6 years later, 7 years later, and look at all the amazing people we've spoken to. Who knows where this horror podcast is going to go to. So this is fun. This is what I want to focus on. This is what I can control this year. Is Appetite for Distortion, Appetite for Horror, and you coming along for the ride. That's been the best part of doing these podcasts. Because if I'm just talking with Michael Jai White, big name, got more listeners for that episode, but still, it's like, okay, it was a cool experience, but not a lot of people are hearing it, or as much as people would hear something from Appetite for Distortion. It's just like, I want to be able to share these experiences with you, which is what the book was. It was a unique thing. So this podcast is a unique thing, because I don't know if anyone brings you along quite like I do. I hope not. We'll see. Again, 6 degrees of GNR bacon. That's what we do here. So it's 6 degrees of horror there. Whatever works. So if you want to be a guest on Appetite for Horror, or a co-host, I should say, the way like I've done it on Appetite for Distortion, we could do that. Absolutely. But who's to come in 2023? Well, I will tell you the only interview I booked so far, because I've just been waiting to get this conversation out with you, and thank you, if you've made it this far, for letting me talk a bit. We're going to get Sean Bevan back on the podcast, one of the producers for Chinese Democracy. So he'll be on later in January, and I'm going to get to it, man. The holidays are over. New Year's is over. I'm going to get to getting a tooth in a few days. I'm going to start going pretty hardcore with guests, and we'll see what happens there. So not just follow Appetite for Horror, follow Appetite for Distortion, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and yes, even TikTok. I'm on TikTok. I think what I'm going to do also when I get my tooth back is I'm going to do more TikToks. Ugh, wow, I'm really a sellout there. Because right now it's all just clips you would find on YouTube or any highlights from the show. But what I think I'm going to do on TikTok is maybe talk more about mental health and show you, the studio and maybe me singing to my cats. I don't know. People do stupid things there. It's all in the name of getting more eyes on Appetite for Distortion. And that will allow us to do more things. It will. And you know what? Because I did reach out, speaking of more things, I did reach out to a journalist friend of mine to possibly co-write Doug's book with me, and maybe that would help. And he gave me the criticism, the critique that Jack couldn't give me, and I was like, "You got it from the word go." He said, "What you sent me was a kick-ass demo reel. Now go finish the album." That's exactly what I did. I made a kick-ass demo reel, rough draft, whatever you want to call it. Rough of a rough draft. But you should be able to see the big picture. And how was my journalist friend able to see it? And this guy wasn't. Whatever. Moving on. This year, 2023. That's where we're at. So, but the conversation always continues on Appetite for Distortion on social media. So even when you don't see an episode, like, oh, it's been a week, it's been like maybe 2 weeks, check in on social media. I'm keeping you updated.
Thanks to the lame ass security, I'm going home.